Oh, I would so love him to know that. It's my favourite irony in history. He goes to all this trouble for a son, tries for 30 years, marries 3 women before at least he has a son. And then, actually, he needn't have bothered with any of that. He could have just had faith in his youngest daughter, Elizabeth, who would go on to be the glory of his dynasty.
History remembers Elizabeth I as a pure virgin queen, almost like a goddess carved into the memory of England. She became an immortal symbol of the British Empire. But when science began digging into the old relics left behind, that glorious image suddenly began to look like something else entirely. A grand deception. The truth was, this monarch may never have been able to marry or bear a child, in the way history has always praised her for refusing to do. Her own body may simply never have allowed it. And even more devastating, the traces of DNA left behind appeared to point to a brutal possibility. The name Elizabeth may never have belonged inside the Tudor bloodline at all. But just as the mysteries around her identity seemed ready to close, another shocking truth emerged from her painful death in 1603. If you have always respected this woman as one of history's greatest queens, are you ready to face the terrifying secrets that may have been buried behind the crown? For more than 4 centuries, the title Virgin Queen has been attached to Elizabeth I as a symbol of noble sacrifice. The woman who ruled England from 1558 to 1603 never married, never produced an heir, and never allowed any man to share her throne. Official history has long treated this as a brilliant political strategy, a way to protect her kingdom from foreign control. But the physical evidence raises a darker possibility. That title may not have been an act of power at all. It may have been a cover built to hide a biological secret that could never be made public. If that theory is true, then the image of the most powerful queen of the Tudor dynasty begins to collapse. In 2026, a group of international scientists decided to search for an answer. The investigation did not begin with her body, because Elizabeth I's tomb inside Westminster Abbey was strictly off-limits to excavation. Instead, they used an AI system called Argus to examine biological traces believed to have survived on her personal relics. This AI system worked like a digital investigator. It scanned and reconstructed organic fragments damaged by time. The scientists focused on 3 major sources of evidence: the checkers ring, ceremonial gloves, and wax seals on royal letters. These were objects believed to have come into direct contact with the queen's skin and hair. The goal of Argus was to extract microscopic epithelial cells still trapped inside their surfaces. The suspicion began to rise when the AI placed those biological traces beside old descriptions of her body and contemporary portraits. In paintings commissioned by the Tudor court, Elizabeth I always appears tall, slender, and marked by unusually long fingers. Imagine fingers that look strikingly elongated, thin like dry branches, far outside the usual body proportions expected of a 16th century woman. The court controlled her public image with extreme care through clothing, ceremony, and layers of cosmetic powder. Yet Argus's simulation suggested that the biological traces it recovered did not fully match the profile of a typical female body. The conflict between biological data and political myth opened a deep crack in the story. If her body carried a truth the court had to hide at any cost to protect the throne, then what had the machine seen inside those degraded genetic sequences? What abnormal detail had Argus found inside the DNA of Elizabeth I? To search for the answer without disturbing the royal tomb at Westminster Abbey, the Argus project had to build a hypothetical genetic profile. The research team at Cambridge collected and extracted biological material from what was believed to be the remains of the Queen. From genetic fragments severely degraded over more than 400 years, the AI system began reconstructing the code. That simulation produced a finding that immediately caused controversy among examiners. The analyzed data indicated that the body believed to belong to Elizabeth I carried XY chromosomes. In biology, the XY chromosome pair is usually associated with male genetic sex, but Argus's deeper analytical algorithms pointed to something more complex. The genetic sequence carried markers consistent with androgen insensitivity syndrome, also known as AIS. This is a rare genetic condition in which a body carries male genetic coding, but its cells do not respond to male hormones. As a result, the body develops outwardly in a female form. From the perspective of modern medicine, a person with complete AIS can have the appearance, voice, and psychology of a woman. But they do not have a uterus, do not have ovaries, and cannot become pregnant. This medical data immediately lined up with Tudor-era descriptions of Elizabeth's body proportions. It explains why the Queen appeared unusually tall and why her fingers look so long in official portraits. A biological condition that may have looked strange in the medieval world now became part of a disturbing chain of logic. The AIS theory immediately changes how the largest political decisions of Elizabeth I's life can be understood. This may have been the real reason she firmly rejected every marriage proposal, produced no direct heir, and kept absolute distance from the physical rituals of royal marriage. The title Virgin Queen was not simply a political slogan meant to preserve England's independence. It was more likely a top-secret shield. That shield allowed her to avoid medical examinations by royal physicians or powerful courtiers. In the world of the Tudor court, even a basic physical examination could have exposed the secret of her body, a revelation that would have shaken her throne at its foundation. In the 16th century, English royal power depended on strict ideas of legitimacy. A king or queen had to prove paternal bloodline, clear gender, and the ability to continue the dynasty in order to keep the nation stable. The crown demanded a lawful heir to prevent the risk of civil war. The fact that a queen could not bear children was already enough to create a serious succession crisis. So, if a monarch was suspected of having a body that did not fit the biological standards of the time, the entire foundation of that reign could collapse at once. The Catholic Church and the English nobility would almost certainly never have accepted a ruler with such a physical condition sitting at the head of the kingdom. The scientific file produced by Argus does not prove that Elizabeth I was male in any simple sense, because that word would badly distort the medical nature of AIS. The data only points to the possibility that this monarch's biological sex was far more complex than the Tudor court ever allowed the public or its enemies to see. From there, another question rises about the system operating inside Richmond Palace. Did the Queen's closest attendants, ladies-in-waiting, or private physicians know about this abnormality? Some rumors suggest that a small inner circle discovered the secret through the routines of her daily life. But they may have been forced to stay silent, turning away from what they knew in order to protect the dynasty from a national crisis. A secret of the body could be hidden beneath magnificent gowns and strict court ceremony. But when Argus began comparing her bloodline with other members of the Tudor royal family, its algorithms found another crack, one far more dangerous than the first. After the suspicion around her body, the Argus investigation turned toward an even more dangerous question. Did Elizabeth I truly carry the blood of King Henry VIII, the father who placed her at the height of Tudor power? King Henry VIII, who ruled England from 1509 to 1547, was the man who built the foundation of this dynasty's power. In the legal and aristocratic system of that era, proving direct paternal blood was a required condition for anyone to sit on the English throne lawfully. Any uncertainty around bloodline meant the loss of the right to rule. This paternal question immediately reopened the stormy relationship between Henry VIII and his second wife, Queen Anne Boleyn, Elizabeth's mother. She was executed by the king in 1536 at the Tower of London on charges of adultery and incest. Many historians argue that the case was less a real criminal prosecution than a brutal political purge, designed to remove a wife who had failed to give the king a male heir. But when viewed through the lens of modern genetics, doubt about Elizabeth I's biological father is no longer just a family dispute. It revives the sentence that destroyed Anne Boleyn and threatens the legitimacy of the entire reign Elizabeth built. To investigate this, Argus attempted to compare the Queen's genetic traces with biological samples linked to the Tudor royal branch. Testing a paternal line after more than 4 centuries is an extremely difficult problem because King Henry VIII has no reliable public DNA profile for direct comparison. To work around that, Argus had to collect sample sequences from royal figures of the same period and from major noble families connected to the Wars of the Roses. These samples served only as a foundation for reconstructing a bloodline context, not as a complete Tudor genetic code. The bloodline analysis released in April 2026 produced highly controversial technical results. The genetic algorithms claimed that DNA extracted from Elizabeth's relics matched completely with the Boleyn line on her mother's side, but the system found no compatible genetic match with the simulated code model for the Tudor side. The key point in the Argus file was not an absolute negative conclusion. It was a paternal genetic gap. The simulated fatherline markers did not seem to fit cleanly with the official claims of the Tudor court. That gap in the data forced investigators to look back to 1533, the year Elizabeth was born at Greenwich Palace, inside a marriage that had deeply divided England. The logical consequence of this finding was devastating. If Elizabeth was not Henry VIII's biological daughter, she was not merely a queen without an heir. In the eyes of Catholic factions, European feudal powers, and supporters of Mary Stuart, she would instantly become an unlawful usurper. Although the genetic file produced by Argus could not turn a scientific suspicion into absolute historical truth, the nature of that information made it a dangerous weapon. Across 44 years on the throne, Elizabeth I faced repeated rebellions, a brutal war with Spain, and a long struggle over succession. A secret about her body could be locked behind the bedroom door at Richmond Palace, but a rumor about a break in the Tudor bloodline could ignite a civil war strong enough to burn the entire kingdom. It is possible the Queen lived through 4 decades of rule in extreme fear that her true identity would be exposed. This may have been a secret known by the insiders who controlled the networks of her court, but they chose silence to protect the stability of the empire. When the truth about blood became too dangerous for the survival of the nation, would those who protected her remain loyal, or had they already begun preparing a different ending for this queen? The medical record surrounding the death of Elizabeth I on March 24, 1603, at Richmond Palace points to a final sequence of hours marked by terrifying pain. What happened did not resemble the quiet decline of old age. Witnesses described the Queen sitting or standing on the floor for 4 straight days and nights. Her body was rigid. She could not lie down. Her mouth burned. It ended only when the Queen drew her final breath after hours of helplessly pointing to her throat, unable to speak. Traditional history records that the cause of death was lead poisoning from Venetian ceruse, a mixture of white lead and vinegar that she had used continuously since 1562 to cover the scars left by smallpox. But modern medical data rejects that explanation. Accumulated lead poisoning can cause severe damage to the liver and kidneys. It does not cause extreme muscle spasms that leave the body rigid, nor does it cause acute paralysis of the throat muscles for days, as described in the Queen's final condition. To search for the truth, the Argus AI system carried out a full toxicology scan. It filtered through a database of thousands of poisons known in the 16th century. After billions of comparisons against the recorded clinical symptoms, the AI identified a group of plant-based toxins with a mechanism that matched completely. It was a combination of atropine, extracted from belladonna, and aconite, extracted from monkshood. The double-strike mechanism of this mixture explains the entire mystery at the sickbed. Atropine can trigger high fevers, flush skin, and delirium. Those symptoms would make the death look like a natural illness, easily misleading court physicians. Meanwhile, aconite attacks the central nervous system directly. Imagine the poison moving like an electric current through the muscle fibers, freezing the body's motor system from the inside. The toxin causes a severe burning sensation in the mouth and gradually paralyzes the muscles. This would have forced the Queen to remain stiff and unable to speak before her heart finally stopped. Argus then carried out a virtual autopsy. By simulating blood chemistry and a virtual nervous system based on the reconstructed DNA profile, the system confirmed that the presence of these 2 toxins produced an absolute match. In the 16th century, mixing a poison this precise would have required master-level knowledge of pharmacology. That kind of knowledge usually belonged to royal physicians, or the spy network of Francis Walsingham. Analysts stressed that this poison would not kill instantly. The perpetrator would have had to drip the invisible toxin into the Queen's food or drink over several days. The victim would weaken little by little, without raising suspicion from the outside. A slow poisoning method required the perpetrator to have absolute and repeated access to the queen's private living space. That condition immediately ruled out distant enemies such as Spain or the Vatican. Suspicion turned toward those standing inside the care system at Richmond Palace. The match between scientific simulation and historical record became hard evidence that this was a calculated killing. But who had enough power to operate inside the Queen's own bedroom? As Elizabeth I lay dying at Richmond Palace, the person who benefited most from a smooth transfer of power was James VI of Scotland. He became King James I of England immediately after her death. James VI was the son of Mary Stuart, the woman Elizabeth herself had ordered executed. His succession was not simply a change in the head of state. It marked the complete end of the legendary Tudor dynasty and the beginning of the Stuart line. But the man holding the decisive key to that transition was Robert Cecil, the Queen's most powerful advisor. Through secret letters exchanged with James VI in advance, Cecil's highest goal was to keep England from falling into chaos after 44 years under a queen with no heir. Although the data file contains no direct proof that Cecil personally administered poison, his strategic position at the most sensitive moment of the dynasty made him the central figure in Argus's analytical models. With his network of power and absolute access to the royal bedroom, Robert Cecil had every reason to act. Most likely, the advisor feared that if the queen lived too long in a delirious state, she might accidentally reveal shocking secrets about her biological sex or the fracture in her bloodline. With all of England holding its breath for a new king, one careless sentence or one leaked document from the sickbed could have been devastating. Imagine the words of a delirious queen like a spark dropped into a giant powder keg. It could have triggered civil unrest across the nation almost instantly. To prevent that danger, actively ending her life would have been Cecil's most logical solution. The actual outcome suggests Cecil's faction had prepared with flawless precision. Just hours after Elizabeth I drew her final breath on March 24th, 1603, Robert Cecil immediately proclaimed James the new King of England. The hidden transfer of power unfolded smoothly, precisely, and as if it had already been rehearsed. If Argus's genetic and toxicology theories are accurate, history appears to have repeated itself in a brutal cycle. Elizabeth I spent her life deceiving the public about her body and bloodline in order to claim and hold the throne. But in her final hours, she may have been deceived by the very people closest to her, quietly murdered so that the throne could be handed to someone else. How many other kings and queens in human history were only pieces on a board, trapped inside plays rewritten by the victors? And how many of the truths people still believe are really just lies that were carefully cleaned up and left behind?